Hello and welcome to Adda with Kalyan. Now, do you know what an Adda is? Were you wondering what an Adda is? Well, it's actually a concept which he had in Calcutta where people would get together at the Para Rock, which we'd say the neighborhood, have cups of tea and chat about anything from football and what's wrong with Argentinian football to what's wrong with the politics in Cuba. Everything would be solved on those cornerstones of the Paras of Calcutta. Things have changed a lot since then all over India with the advent of cafes and coffee shops, and that's what we're going to talk about, this change which has been brought up by the cafe culture in India and how it's affected our lives, how we live our lives differently. And we've got a very interesting panel because this is a cross India phenomena, so we've got people joining us from across India in the panel. In the studio today we've got Arpana back again. She's been a part of Adda with Kalyan before. She runs a cafe called Gostana in Bandra where I live. She's also studied in Australia, which is very famous for the catering and cafe culture over there, so she's going to talk about that. Joining us from Kolkata is Shohini, who runs Mrs. Magpie, which is again a very popular cafe over there, and it's a bakery as well. And what's interesting is that she's got a La Cordon Bleu training, and before that she used to work in fashion with Shoboshachi, so that's a very interesting combination. Again from La Cordon Bleu is Xerxes from Bangalore, and he's studied in Bangalore as well as gone to Australia and studied and come back and opened this very popular concept cafe where a lot of things are cooked in-house right from scratch, and it's called the Red Fork Cafe, and it's really popular there as well. And then joining us from Gurgaon is Aharnish, and Aharnish was someone who used to work in the corporate world like I did, but he liked his coffee so much that he decided to open a cafe called Busy Bean, which is really popular in Gurgaon. So a very interesting mix of people who've studied, people who've been in fashion, people who've been in the corporate world, but all brought together by the love to serve coffee and tea in cafes, and we're going to talk to them. So I'm going to come to you, Arpana. When you went to Sydney to study, at that time there was no cafe culture in Mumbai.
No.
And things changed when you came back?
A lot. As in, I went in '96 to Australia, and there were cafes all over, from a little town in Lura to name the chains. So when I came back to India, it still took some time. I came back in 2000. Till then, chai was the most popular thing, not so much as a coffee. Coffee was always something a luxurious thing. Like if you go to a 5-star, we would not order chai over there because that's all over the place. 5-star means you need to have a coffee. So coffee was only a luxurious thing before I went to Australia, and I think with chains like Coffee Day and all, then it became more of a trend.
And even in Gostana, right from the beginning, you've had some pretty good quality coffees and,
yes,
and a good machine and stuff like that.
Having been exposed to good coffee, there was no way I wanted to compromise. So that was one of the reasons I consciously made sure that I served good coffee on the menu.
And that's worked because there are quite a few coffee fans in Gostana.
Yes, there
are. Shohini, now coming to you, and Kolkata, when I left it in the late 90s, was such a strong tea drinking city. Do you see that changing now? Do you see a bigger interest in coffee now?
Yeah, a lot of people are interested in coffee, but I think why it started was because generally there was a lack of places for people to hang out, for youngsters, etc. You had fine dining places or you didn't have anything. So you had a lot of CCDs and baristas which came up first. So I think that really shifted it from chai to coffee.
And that's something which I saw in Mumbai as well, Shohini, that when I came here in the late 90s, there wasn't much of a place where one could hang out, and one had to at the most go to pubs or theaters or stuff like that. And that's a big difference which the cafes made. Which also brings me to Mrs. Magpie. What was the trend which you saw in Kolkata which sort of inspired you to open a cafe like that? Because I remember when I left, it was a city where people would not spend much on eating out.
Yeah, it was quite a risk. Actually, as I would say, was one of the first cafes which opened up, because in the last 3 years there's been a huge change in the culture over here, in the food culture in Calcutta. At that time, I think there wasn't so many different kinds of food which was available. You had I call it the Kolkata continental shops, and they pretty much had the same kind of food with different names. But then, I think that started a outbreak of what people wanted to serve a more authentic food. More like there were a lot of people traveling outside and they're coming back in and they know what, say, a crepe should taste like, and you don't want to taste like an eggy doughy crepe. I only bring that up because that's one of the experiences I remember, which really spurred me on to wanting to serve authentic European food. I would say. Just an authentic experience.
And it's quite a changing city, and I think even the way the hub of the city has changed. It's not just Park Street anymore, but it's spread across, and that's pretty interesting. And that really is the theme of today's conversation: the change which India has seen in the post-liberalization years, and how the cafe culture has been a big part of that. And talking of changes, I mean, nothing captures the change as much as the city of Gurgaon does, because I think that when it comes to the corporate world, probably New Delhi is completely eclipsed, because whenever I go to Delhi on work for corporate meetings nowadays, it's always at Gurgaon. So coming to you, Harnish and Busy Bean, if an outsider was to go step into Busy Bean, what is the picture he would get of Gurgaon?
See, that way, the biggest plus for Gurgaon is it doesn't have a legacy. It's a fairly young city. So it doesn't have the cultural trappings of, say, Calcutta or a Bombay. So fairly anybody who steps into a busy bin in Gurgaon can, if he is well travelled, he can be either in Sydney, he can be in Rome, he can be in New York, or he can be in Gurgaon. But people who haven't travelled, they are surely going to get zapped by, for them, coffee still comes out of a bottle and which has to be made as per their own patented recipes, which includes beating it with sugar, adding milk, not adding milk. So then they see the combination of coffees available and they are really amazed at what coffee can be. Instead of just a plain old-fashioned drink associated with, snobbery, or you have a special occasion, then you have coffee. So I think the world has changed, and Gurgaon, I think, is at the forefront of leading that change in the country.
Yeah, in fact, you know what, Harnish, I must say that when I was looking at cafes to feature, I tapped my friend Mariam Reshi, who the famous food writer from Delhi, and she strongly recommended you. And in fact, she spoke to me about 3 or 4 cafes, and almost all of them were Gurgaon. And I would keep telling her that I want a cafe in Delhi, because from outside you would think as that being the metro. But do you think the cafe culture is being driven more in Gurgaon than in Delhi?
See, Delhi is it's not one city. As per me, Delhi is a combination of cities. So you have a South Delhi, you have a West Delhi, you have a Northeast, you have Northeast. So it's a very, very different market altogether. Whereas Gurgaon is more or less uniform. Like you have multicultural and multi-ethnic and across spectrum, audience is found in one place. So if I have a pour over coffee in Gurgaon, nearly everybody takes to it. Whereas in the case of Delhi, if I have a pour over in South Delhi, yeah, people might appreciate. But if I have a pour over in East Delhi, then people will see what is this strange looking kettle and what is this coffee. So that's a big challenge for us. Even we are not dared to go to Delhi market right now.
So you're saying that Gurgaon is a more homogeneous market than Delhi?
Yeah, more homogeneous and more. It's early adapter, so they learn and adapt very quickly to newer trends in coffee, as well as other food also.
True. Yeah, I mean, that's where Farzi Cafe launched and so on as well. I think you've raised a very interesting point, and that's what I'm going to come to you, Azhar says, because when Harnish was talking about Gurgaon, he said that unlike cities like Kolkata or Mumbai or Delhi, there's no legacy in Gurgaon and they can try out new things. Now, when I think of Bangalore, there's a lot of coffee legacy over there, like the filter coffee cuppi, which you'd get at the MTRs and then the Darshinis. And then you have the cafes which have come up, cafes like yours. So do you think that there's a phenomena of 2 Bangalores happening now? The traditional Bangalore and the modern Bangalore? Do you see that happening?
Yes, definitely that's happening. But the good thing is that neither one is taking over each other. So people are willing to try the new. And now with a lot of expats and young generation that eats out a lot. So the modern coffee is picking up a lot faster. But even like no disregard to the classic coffee. it's still very popular. It's a big fan favorite.
And is the traditional Bangalorean being open to these new forms of coffee, or are they sticking to filter coffee?
Um, well, I think on a daily basis they would like their filter coffee, but they're definitely open to try it out. Like mentioned earlier, so there's a lot of choice for people to pick and choose on what they like. So even the filter coffee will always be there. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But people are much more open nowadays to trying something new.
That's great. Shohini, I'm going to come to you now in Kolkata. Now, I was recently privy to a tea brand, Tata's, who's into the Tata tea and so on, and they have recently launched a coffee brand called Tata Grand because they see a market there. So do you see that happening in Kolkata, because it's such a strong tea market? Like recently I've got a cousin visiting me. I said, what tea do you want? And he said liquor tea, because they go into the loose tea and stuff like that. Is there an adoption happening of coffee there, or is it still a tea market?
I would say there's a definite market for coffee, especially with the youth in the city. So I think that's the change. You see a few, people say 40 plus who would, or 30 plus, because I'm a tea drinker. But usually, as I said, it's the kids who are kind of hanging out at the cafes, and young professionals who just it's just the venue, I think, which is changing people into a coffee drinker, and you're kind of adapting American trends, like that's a cup of coffee you need in the morning to pick yourself up. It's just I think a lifestyle change, which is creating the market.
What I'm wondering is that whether this exposure which they're getting when people go out of home, so whether it's in the cafes of Calcutta or even in Bangalore, is that seeping into what people are doing in home? So if they're like trying out coffees inside, outside, are they like coming back and trying coffee as well, or at home it's more of tea and going out and having coffee?
I think at home it's still more of tea, because right now getting how to get your coffee beans ground at home is still like quite an effort, because a lot of people they want that quick a quick solution.
Yeah, I agree with you.
They prefer to just go down to the
I agree with you.
There's a coffee shop just walking distance usually when you're in Central.
True, I agree with you, because I'm a big coffee drinker, but I would rather have either instant or go to a coffee shop close by, or even tea bags. Tea, like my wife and I just dip in tea bags. So when we've got folks visiting from Calcutta, then it's loose tea and figuring out how to make it. And it's a new way of living, isn't it, Arpana? I mean, life becoming fast, and I think that cafes sort of reflect that.
Yeah. We're also culturally used to instant coffee at home, and till now, like this chai time which happens at home. So at home, it's still going to take time, but people are passionate about it. I have seen they actually buy coffee beans, they buy the whole French press, everything go way out. But then again, that's not done on a regular basis, as and when you have the time.
In fact, I was wondering about that, people who are passionate about coffee, and Arnish, since your Busy Bean sort of focuses on coffee and that's really the focus of it, do you see people coming in and asking about different coffees or their origins or the way they're prepared, or do they just come in and ask for a cappuccino?
It's a kind of mix. When people see, because we have an open display system, like I've got 8 origin and blends which I display in the open. They can pick and choose what coffee they will have. So when they see these various type of coffees, then obviously it intrigues them to find, and they ask, okay, what are all these coffees? And then of course we take the extra effort in educating them as to what all these coffees are and how they are all different from each other, and how one coffee can be great as an espresso, but one other can be great as a drip. So of course that fires their curiosity, and then obviously they ask, or they want to have a different press or an espresso or an aeropress. So that I see that inquisitiveness, but you have to fire the imagination. They don't come on their own and ask. I am yet to see anybody just says, okay, give me a P-Berry or on a filter.
So you've got a mixed crowd looking at.
No.
Okay, great. Now, Xerxes, like if I look at your cafe, Red Fork, and actually even Arpana's or Shohini's, Mrs. Magpie, I mean, you are more than just coffee or tea outlets. I mean, in the case of Arpana's, it's her burgers in the case of Shohini, the cupcakes, and then the comprehensive range which you are providing, Xerxes. So do you think that when people are coming in, they're looking in just for a beverage, a coffee or tea, or it's more or it helps if it's a composite package? Any of you who would like to answer that?
I think it's helpful when there's a whole package, like you said. It kind of goes together as a meal, be it a breakfast, a lunch, or now I wouldn't say dinner as much for coffee, because we still don't have that culture of drinking coffee in the night. A lot of people think it can keep them awake, but at least it's a big advantage for breakfast and lunch, definitely. Like someone mentioned earlier, the whole idea of starting your day off with a cup of coffee is kind of picking up here in Bangalore.
True. Shohini, now if I think of Kolkata culturally, like the Adda culture, was such a big part of Calcutta, or even the coffee house, and how it defined what the city was, and the city's beliefs, and the sort of mindsets which people had in terms of politics, culture, cinema, and the sort of discussions which they had. As someone who's seen the change happening in Kolkata, and you've traveled the world as well, do you see a new Kolkata coming up in the new cafes of Calcutta?
Yeah, so there's more demand, I guess, for quality, for something new, something else, because exactly what my cafe fulfills, it could be fulfilled by a cafe coffee day, but it's just a different experience, ambience. I think that's what people are coming in for, something a little bit more unique.
Yeah, that's true. Another change which I have seen, Shohini, as someone who goes back maybe once a year or something like that, is that service standards have really improved, because I remember, like, in one of my earlier trips back to Calcutta, I'd gone to Dokhinapon, and we went to Dolly's. And before Dolly's, when we went to all the local shops in the afternoon, the hand-load shops, and they were like upset that we'd gone there and woken them up. But now I see a lot of warm service, a lot of proactive service in the restaurants and cafes. Do you see that as well?
There has to be. Yeah, there has to be. There's more competition. That's good.
Yeah.
Makes.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see that change happening. Arpana, I was just wondering that whether there's been a bit of a reverse movement, because Mumbai used to be a tea market, and then the cafes came up, and suddenly it became all about coffee for the youngsters. Yes. But I know that you've recently introduced a new line of teas with Snigdha and Ghostana. Do you see an interest in tea returning? Because in Bandra also there's Taj Tea House and Tea Room 17 and Chayos. So do you think there's an interest?
There is. It's still picking up with going away from the traditional tea. It's still picking up, but there is a lot of interest, especially given the health factors, and now the organic teas are now being promoted for longevity of life and skin care and all that.
And so the green teas and chamomiles.
So there is tea is definitely coming back too, but like I say, let's give it some time.
So here you have a lot of interesting things happening around the cafes in India, and it gives me a lot of pleasure, because I'm someone who loves cafes, and you'll find me and my wife often in cafes. In fact, I've just written a blog post about our favorite cafes in Bandra, and probably nothing is a place which you're more fond of than Candies, and that's where I go most morning for my fix of double shot cappuccino. In fact, we were there this morning, my wife and I, before we set off for work. So I'm going to leave you with a clip from the shoot which we did at Candies on my channel, The Finely Chopped. I hope you like it, and join us soon on the next Adda with Kalyan. And what's the secret behind the coffee? I mean, a double shot is 80 rupees, a single shot is 40 rupees. My wife and I believe that the cappuccinos here are absolutely the best we've had in Mumbai. So what's the secret behind the coffee?
It's the beans. It's a good blend of beans.
And how
and the price.
Yeah.
I've kept it low.
No, but even the kick which you get out of it, and it's always so frothy, it's always at the right temperature. It's
I think it's also the machines. Good coffee machines.
So where do you learn how to make the cappuccinos? Like, did someone train you, or did you teach the people?
I've taught the staff how to make the cappuccinos.